All right, so I suppose this is the introduction, the introductory piece for a series that I want to call "Sorting Litter by ... and 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 uh, and presumably, or perhaps, or at least I propose this to be the case. That ... will be replaced in each instance of the series, in each individual performance of the series with something. So we'll be sorting litter by and hopefully it will be a new subject at every turn. In this instance, in the introduction, I'll simply sort the litter by recyclability, and I won't give anything away. Oh, let's see, that's our little slideshow cut out on us, so I'm gonna have to edit that into a loop later, which will alter the diegetic relationship between the sound and the imagery here, but won't perhaps do so in a way that's disorienting or confusing, or perhaps will if we decide to go in that direction. So these are images of litter, pieces of litter that I found this afternoon. Now, I should make a disclaimer that this isn't the only litter that I found today. I did three three litter runs, and I'm referring to these runs as a protocol. And the reason that I'm referring to these litter runs as protocol is because I began, well, I'm not sure I entirely began, because, like a lot of people, I don't like having, litter around my house or in my yard. But I really began with the idea of the protocols after both of my res dogs got sick, because there were things, that they ate in my yard that people either threw into the yard, or that blew into the yard because of the wind, and it's difficult to sort some of those conditions, and it's easier to sort some when things like big pieces of glass, or a large amount of a food item end up in the yard, and there isn't a lot of wind. It's presumably one can ascribe that to someone intentionally throwing that item into the yard. And when there's more wind, it's sometimes more difficult to determine where it comes from. These items I found in the alley behind the yard, where the dogs had eaten some trash that was left in the yard, and however it got there, and both got fairly seriously ill. And so these protocols involve, in the same way that I used to check for rattlesnakes when we lived in the country, before letting them out. Now I do a perimeter check around the yard to make sure there aren't poisonous materials. And I've found various and sundry levels of toxic and poisonous materials that I certainly don't want my dogs having access to, whether it's the fault of the wind, or it's the intentionality of someone who lives in the neighborhood here. And so, as I was saying, that these three items that are clearly litter, I found in the alley this afternoon, after having already performed three separate trash collecting runs throughout the day, one in the morning and two more in the early afternoon. So they're new pieces of litter, and And in addition to the protocols that I've developed as a kind of performance, piece and performance work, I thought that I'd begin documenting the individual pieces of litter, and then to include them in one of these sorting pieces. And in this instance, we'll be sorting litter by ... And today, we're sorting litter by recyclability. So clearly, the Kirkland purified water container falls under the category of recyclable. So I put that in our recycling bin. And after having taken these pictures of it to document the various elements of our sorting project. Now this apple fritter, I believe it's not a real apple fritter. If you read the description here, it's clearly a container for cannabis. And I'm really neither pro or contra cannabis. I love reggae music, but it's not really particularly because some of my favorite musicians sing about cannabis, but for other for other reasons that should be obvious from the work that I've produced. So I'm neither for or against it, but what I guess if I had to be critical, it would be that it's not a substance that I really want blowing into my yard. And although there was no cannabis in the container, nevertheless I'm certain that there are trace elements of the product left behind, and I don't particularly want my dogs getting a hold of this package or any of the products associated with it. I don't see that's a problematic idea. But I don't believe that container, that the apple fritter product, which I believe is some kind of marijuana product, is recyclable. So the answer to, and I mean, I guess if you were stoned enough, you might attempt to, let's go ahead and wait for that package to show up again. If obviously, I don't know if the litter goes together, but obviously it conceptually kind of makes sense. If you use this product, you might get thirsty and you would need the other product. But here we are again. So unless you are particularly, or thoroughly rather stoned, I don't think you would, even attempt to recycle this package. So I placed this package in the garbage container, and then this final piece of litter, is clearly some kind of gauze from a wound, and whether it was intentionally left there or accidentally, I have no idea. And it may belong to like the whole process of smoking pot and being dehydrated and drinking water, or maybe getting so stoned, I guess, that you fell over and maybe cut your elbow or something and needed the gauze to cover the wound. I'm not sure if they all go together conceptually as a kind of narrative or story, or whether they're random items. So if I was a language poet, I would isolate them as random items and not piece together the larger narrative. But I have a tendency to want to build narratives out of apparently non-narrative materials. So there's all kinds of narratives that one could imagine that involve like these three items. And now that I think about it, a better way of sorting these three items, the water container that this Kirkland water container that I placed in the recycling bin, and the cannabis packaging that I placed in the trash, and the piece of gauze that I placed in the trash. A better way, of sorting these three objects, rather than by recyclability would be, by narrativity, right? And and then we could define that narrativity perhaps in different ways. So sorting, apparently, apparently random pieces of litter and apparently random acts of littering by narrative or non-narrative strategies of representation. That would have been much better. And then in this instance, I would have sorted them by narrative strategy of representation, and that narrative, involves someone, I suppose, getting so stoned that they require, some amount of rehydration, which they receive from the Kirkland purified water product, but perhaps also so stoned that they had difficulty opening it, and perhaps cut themselves on the plastic top or fell over in the process and required the gauze, and that's not really a narrative in David Anton's sense of the term narrative, but it's most certainly, and we'll end here, a story.